Jiwon pushed open the door to his apartment and dropped his heavy backpack on the floor. The engineering textbooks inside made a loud thud that echoed through the quiet space. He looked around the living room and noticed that everything was exactly as he had left it that morning. The couch cushions were still perfectly arranged. The coffee table had no water rings or crumbs. Even the remote control sat in the exact same spot. His roommate Hyuna was probably still at the library. She spent most of her time there, studying biology with an intensity that made Jiwon feel lazy about his own study habits. When the university housing office had asked him to take on a roommate mid-semester, they had mentioned she was an exchange student from Seoul who needed someone understanding and patient. Jiwon had agreed immediately. Growing up in a Korean-American household, he understood the challenges of adapting to new cultures. Hyuna had moved in 3 months ago with just 2 small suitcases and a large collection of what she called skincare products. The products came in strange bottles and jars that Jiwon had never seen before, even though his sister was obsessed with Korean beauty routines. When he had offered to show Hyuna around the campus and introduce her to other Korean students, she had politely declined. She preferred to keep to herself, she had said in perfect but slightly formal English. That was another thing that puzzled Jiwon. Hyuna spoke English better than most native speakers he knew. Her vocabulary was extensive, and she never made the small grammar mistakes that his other international friends struggled with. Yet she claimed to have only started learning English 2 years ago. When he had complimented her on this, she had simply smiled and changed the subject. Jiwon walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. His shelves were packed with leftover pizza, energy drinks, and instant ramen. Hyuna's section was nearly empty except for several bottles of what looked like blue sports drinks and some sealed containers that she had labeled with Korean characters he couldn't read. He had asked her about the drinks once, and she had explained they were a special supplement for her skin condition. The containers, she said, held traditional Korean fermented foods that helped with digestion. The apartment felt cold, as it always did. Hyuna kept the thermostat set to 65 degrees, claiming that warm temperatures made her uncomfortable. Jiwon had bought extra blankets and learned to wear hoodies indoors. It was a small price to pay for having such a quiet and clean roommate. He grabbed a soda and settled on the couch to work on his thermodynamics homework. The problems were challenging, but he found the logic soothing. Numbers and equations made sense in a way that people sometimes didn't. As he worked, he found himself thinking about Hyuna's odd habits. She never ate meals with him, despite his many invitations. When he cooked dinner and offered to share, she would thank him politely but explain that she had already eaten. Yet he never saw evidence of her cooking. The kitchen was always spotless, and none of his dishes were ever dirty in the morning. Sometimes he wondered if she ate at all. Her shower routine was another mystery. Every evening at exactly 9 o'clock, Hyuna would disappear into the bathroom with an armload of her special products. The shower would run for hours. Sometimes Jiwon fell asleep to the sound of running water and woke up to find it still going. When he had mentioned the water bill, she had immediately offered to pay the entire amount. She had pulled out a thick roll of cash from her purse, which raised even more questions about her financial situation. Jiwon had also noticed that Hyuna never seemed to sleep. Her bedroom was next to his and the walls were thin. He never heard the sounds of someone settling into bed or moving around during the night. Sometimes he caught glimpses of light under her door at 3 or 4 in the morning. When he asked about it, she explained that she was adjusting to the time difference and often stayed up reading research papers. The strangest thing about Hyuna was her knowledge of marine biology. Despite being enrolled in general biology courses, she knew more about ocean ecosystems than most graduate students. During study sessions, when Jiwon struggled with basic chemistry concepts, Hyuna would casually mention complex details about deep-sea organisms and underwater pressure systems. When he asked how she knew so much, she would smile mysteriously and say that the ocean had always fascinated her. Her skin was another unusual feature, though Jiwon tried not to stare. It had an almost translucent quality that made her look like she was lit from within. Her complexion was flawless, without a single blemish or even visible pores. Sometimes, in certain lighting, her skin seemed to have a very faint shimmer. Jiwon assumed it was from all those expensive skincare products she used. Hyuna's body temperature was consistently cold. The few times they had accidentally brushed hands while reaching for something, her skin had felt like she had just been holding ice cubes. When he had asked if she was feeling well, She had assured him that low body temperature ran in her family. She had mentioned something about improved circulation and traditional Korean health practices. Despite all these oddities, Ji-won genuinely liked having Hyuna as a roommate. She was respectful, quiet, and incredibly intelligent. Their conversations, though infrequent, were always interesting. She had a unique perspective on human behavior that made him think about things differently. She would make observations about social interactions that were surprisingly insightful for someone who claimed to struggle with American culture. The apartment door opened, and Hyuna walked in carrying her usual stack of library books. She moved with an unusual grace, as if she was floating rather than walking. Her long black hair seemed to flow around her like it was underwater, even though there was no breeze in the apartment. "Hello, Ji-won," she said in her soft, musical voice. "How were your classes today?" "Pretty good," he replied, looking up from his homework. "Thermodynamics is kicking my butt, but I'm getting through it." "How about you? Find any good research today?" Hyuna's eyes lit up in a way that made them seem almost luminescent. "I discovered some fascinating papers about bioluminescent organisms in deep ocean trenches. The adaptations are remarkable," Ji-won smiled. Even her enthusiasm was unusual, but it was one of the things he appreciated about her. In a world of stressed college students worried about grades and jobs, Hyuna maintained a genuine curiosity about learning that was refreshing. "That sounds cool," he said. "Maybe you can tell me about it over dinner sometime?" Hyuna's expression shifted slightly, and she clutched her books closer to her chest. "Perhaps," she said carefully. "I should go study now. Thank you for asking." She disappeared into her room, leaving Ji-won alone with his homework and his growing list of questions about his mysterious roommate. The next Tuesday started like any other day. Ji-won left for his morning engineering lab at 8 o'clock, grabbing a granola bar and stuffing his laptop into his backpack. Hyuna was already gone, as she usually was. Her morning routine remained a mystery to him, since she somehow managed to get ready and leave without making a single sound. The lab session was supposed to run until noon, but Professor Kim dismissed the class early when the testing equipment malfunctioned. Ji-won didn't mind the unexpected free time. He had a thermodynamics assignment due tomorrow that he could work on at home in peace. He unlocked the apartment door at 10:30 and immediately noticed something different. The usual silence was broken by a strange sound coming from the bathroom. It wasn't quite splashing like someone taking a normal bath. The sound was more rhythmic, almost like waves gently moving back and forth. There was also a soft humming noise that he couldn't identify. Ji-won set his backpack down quietly and listened. The bathroom door was closed and he could see light coming from under the crack. The water had been running for over 3 hours now, since before he had left for class. Even for Hyuna, this was unusually long. "Hyuna," he called out. "Everything okay in there?" There was no response. The strange sounds continued, and if anything, they seemed to get more intense. Ji-won felt a growing sense of worry. What if she had slipped and hurt herself? What if she had passed out from the steam? Her already low body temperature could make her more vulnerable to overheating. He knocked on the bathroom door, louder this time. "Hyuna, I'm getting worried. Can you answer me?" Still nothing. The humming sound stopped abruptly, but the rhythmic water movement continued. Ji-won pressed his ear to the door and heard what might have been rapid breathing, but it sounded different from normal human breathing. It was deeper, more controlled. His concern overrode his respect for privacy. Ji-won remembered that their landlord had given him an emergency key to the bathroom when he had signed the lease. It was meant for situations exactly like this, when someone might be in danger and unable to respond. He retrieved the key from the kitchen drawer where he kept important documents. His hands were shaking slightly as he inserted it into the lock. "Hyuna, I'm coming in. I'm worried you might be hurt." The lock clicked open. Ji-won pushed the door slowly, giving her a chance to respond if she could. "I'm just checking to make sure you're safe," he called out as he stepped inside. The bathroom was filled with thick steam that made it hard to see clearly at first. The mirrors were completely fogged over and the air felt heavy and humid. As his eyes adjusted, Ji-won looked toward the bathtub and froze. Someone was in the tub, but it wasn't the Hyuna he knew. The figure in the water was longer and more graceful than any human. Her skin was completely translucent, with soft blue and green lights moving beneath the surface like gentle lightning. The lights pulsed in rhythm with what Ji-won now realized was her breathing. Along her neck, he could see 3 pairs of slits that opened and closed smoothly. They were gills. Her limbs were extended and elegant, with what looked like webbing between her fingers and toes. Her hair floated around her like dark seaweed, much longer than it appeared when she was in her human form. Most shocking of all, she was beautiful. Not human beautiful, but stunning in a way that made Jiwon's breath catch in his throat. The being in the tub noticed him and let out a sound that was part gasp, part musical note. She tried to sit up quickly, and as she did, her form began to shift. The translucent skin became more opaque. The gills sealed closed and the bioluminescent patterns faded. But the transformation was incomplete and flickering, like a television with bad reception. "No, no, no," she said in Hyuna's voice, but with an accent he had never heard before. Her hands moved frantically as she tried to complete her human disguise, but stress was making it impossible. "This cannot happen. You were not supposed to return early." Jiwon stood in the doorway, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. His first thought wasn't about aliens or impossible things. His first thought was that she looked distressed and vulnerable. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping forward instinctively. "Do you need help?" The question seemed to surprise her so much that she stopped trying to transform. She stared at him with eyes that were larger and more luminous than human eyes, but still unmistakably the same gentle eyes he had come to associate with his roommate. "You are not running away," she said, and it sounded like a question. "Should I be running away?" Jiwon asked, sitting down on the bathroom floor so he wouldn't be looming over her. "You're obviously not human, but you're still you, right? You're still Hyuna?" Her form flickered again as emotions played across her features. "Hyuna is not my real name. My actual name is—" She made a sound like whale song mixed with flowing water. "But I chose Hyuna when I came here. I thought it would help me fit in better." Jiwon nodded slowly. "Okay, so you're not from Seoul?" "No," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am from very far away, much farther than Seoul." The bathroom fell quiet except for the sound of water still running from the faucet. Jiwon could see that she was trembling, though he wasn't sure if it was from cold fear or something else entirely. "The water's getting cold," he observed. "Do you want me to add more hot water?" She blinked at him several times as if his question was completely unexpected. "You want to help me?" "Well, yeah," Jiwon said, reaching over to adjust the faucet temperature. "You're my roommate, and you look like you could use some help right now." As the warm water began flowing again, her form seemed to stabilize slightly. The bioluminescent patterns under her skin resumed their gentle pulsing, and her breathing became more regular. "I do not understand," she said. "Your species is supposed to react with fear when confronted with the unknown. You should be demanding explanations or threatening to call authorities." Jiwon considered this. "I mean, I'm definitely curious about explanations. But threatening you seems kind of pointless. You've been a great roommate for 3 months. Finding out you're not human doesn't change that." She studied his face carefully as if looking for signs of deception. "You truly are not afraid?" "I'm confused," Jiwon admitted. "And I have about 1,000,000 questions. But afraid? No, you've never done anything to hurt me. You pay your share of rent on time, you keep the place clean, and you're probably the most considerate person I've ever lived with. So you're not actually a person, technically. That's weird, but it doesn't make you dangerous." For the first time since he had discovered her, she smiled. It was the same gentle smile he knew, but now he could see that her teeth were slightly sharper than human teeth, designed for a different kind of diet. "My supervisors did not predict this response," she said. "Supervisors?" Jiwon asked, settling more comfortably on the bathroom floor. "This sounds like there's a bigger story here." She nodded slowly. "There is. A much bigger story, and I think I am going to need your help to figure out what to do next." The warm water continued to flow, and steam filled the air around them, as Jiwon prepared to learn just how big that story really was. 2 hours later, Jiwon sat on his couch with a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Hyuna, now back in her human form but looking somehow more relaxed than he had ever seen her, sat across from him with her legs folded under her. She held one of her blue drinks, which she had explained was actually a mineral supplement that helped maintain her human disguise. "So let me make sure I understand this," Jiwon said, rubbing his temples. "You're from a planet called Kepler 438b, which is about 470 light-years away from Earth." "Correct," Hyuna said, taking a sip of her blue drink. "Though we call it Aquatica, it is almost entirely covered by ocean, with only small volcanic islands scattered across the surface. And your people, the HFY, have been watching Earth for how long? About 50 of your years, she replied. We first detected your radio signals in what you call the 1970s. We have been monitoring your planet's development ever since. Jiwan shook his head in amazement. And nobody knows about this? Your people have been watching us for 50 years and our governments don't know? Huna's expression became more serious. Your governments do not know because we chose not to reveal ourselves. First contact is a delicate process. We needed to understand your species before making any decisions about open communication. That makes sense, I guess, Jiwan said. So you've been studying us. What did you find out? Many things, Huna said, setting down her drink. Humans are fascinating and contradictory. You are capable of great violence, but also incredible compassion. You destroy your environment, but also work desperately to save it. You fight wars over differences, but you also create art and music that speaks to universal emotions. Jiwan nodded slowly. Yeah, that sounds like us. We're kind of a mess. That is precisely what makes you interesting, Huna said with a smile. Most species develop in more predictable ways, but humans seem to contain every possible response to any situation. You are chaotic in ways that are both dangerous and wonderful. So where do you fit into all this? Jiwan asked. Are you like a spy or something? Huna laughed, and the sound was more musical than her usual human laugh. I suppose you could call me a cultural anthropologist. 10 years ago, the HFY Council decided that we needed to study human society more closely. We began placing observers in your universities, your cities, your social groups. How many of you are there here? Currently, there are 12 HFY observers on Earth, she said. We are spread across different continents and cultures. I was assigned to North American universities because of my aptitude for language acquisition. Jiwan leaned forward, intrigued. Why universities specifically? Universities represent the best of human intellectual curiosity, Huna explained. They are places where your species gathers to learn and exchange ideas. We believed that understanding how humans learn and grow would give us insight into your true nature. And what did you learn? Huna was quiet for a moment, considering her words. I learned that humans form connections in ways that we did not expect. You create bonds not just with your own species, but with anything that shows kindness or need. You adopt animals from other species and treat them as family members. You care for plants and ecosystems. You even form emotional attachments to inanimate objects. That's true, Jiwan said with a grin. I definitely have feelings about my car. Exactly, Huna said, her eyes lighting up. This capacity for connection extends beyond logic or biological similarity. When I first arrived, I was prepared to maintain a clinical distance while observing human behavior. But you made that impossible. What do you mean? You were kind to me from the moment I moved in, she said. You offered to help me with everything from campus navigation to social customs. You shared your food, invited me to join your study groups, and never once made me feel like an outsider, even when I declined your invitations. Jiwan felt heat rise in his cheeks. That's just normal roommate stuff. No, it is not, Huna said firmly. I have observed many human roommate relationships during my time here. Most are polite but distant. Some are actively hostile. Very few show the genuine care and interest that you demonstrated. Maybe I just like having friends? That is exactly my point, Huna said, leaning forward excitedly. Humans have this remarkable ability to turn strangers into family. You do not just tolerate differences, you actively embrace them. You find ways to connect across any barrier. Jiwan thought about this for a moment. Is that unusual? I mean, compared to other species you've encountered? Most intelligent species form strong bonds within their own groups but remain suspicious of outsiders, Huna explained. They cooperate when necessary, but they do not actively seek connection with those who are different from them. Humans do something that we have never observed before. Which is, you collect differences, she said with wonder in her voice. You seek out new experiences, new perspectives, new ways of thinking. Even when those differences challenge your existing beliefs or make you uncomfortable, you often choose curiosity over fear. Jiwan considered his own life experiences. His friend group was incredibly diverse, spanning different ethnicities, religions, and backgrounds. He had never thought of this as unusual, but maybe it was. So what's your mission exactly? He asked. Are you supposed to decide whether Earth is safe to contact? Huna's expression became more complex. My mission was to live among humans for one full academic year and report back on human social compatibility. The HFY Council will use my observations to decide whether to initiate formal first contact. And what will you report? That is where I need your help, Yuna said, her voice becoming uncertain. My observations have been overwhelmingly positive, but the Council is concerned about human unpredictability. They are particularly worried about your species' history of violence toward anything perceived as threatening. Jiwan felt a chill of understanding. They're afraid we'll react badly to aliens. Yes, Yuna said quietly. There is significant debate among my people about whether humans are ready for contact with other intelligent species. Some believe that your aggressive tendencies make you too dangerous. Others argue that your capacity for adaptation makes you ideal partners for interstellar cooperation. What do you think? Yuna looked at him directly, her large eyes serious and thoughtful. I think that humans are not perfect, but they are exactly what the galaxy needs. You have flaws, but you also have this incredible ability to grow and change. You learn from your mistakes and you always try to be better than you were before. That's a pretty optimistic view, Ji-won said. It is based on careful observation, Yuna replied, but it is also based on personal experience. You discovered my true nature less than 3 hours ago, and your first instinct was to offer help. You have not demanded proof or explanations. You have not threatened to expose me or contact authorities. You simply accepted that I am different and asked how you could help. Ji-won realized she was right. His reaction had been automatic, driven by concern for someone he cared about rather than fear of the unknown. So what happens now? He asked. Now, Yuna said, I need to decide what to tell the Council, and I need to determine whether there is a way to make first contact that honors both human nature and HFY concerns. How can I help? Yuna smiled, and this time her smile carried the full warmth of her true nature. By being exactly who you are, Ji-won. By showing me that my faith in humanity is justified. Outside the apartment, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the room. Inside, a human and an alien sat together, planning how to bridge the gap between two worlds. Over the next 2 weeks, Ji-won's life became a crash course in interstellar anthropology. Hyuna no longer needed to maintain her human disguise constantly when they were alone in the apartment, which meant Ji-won got to see her true form more often. He discovered that her bioluminescent patterns changed based on her emotions, creating a beautiful light show across her translucent skin when she was excited or thoughtful. She also began sharing more details about HFY culture and technology. Her people had mastered sustainable energy thousands of years ago, using the thermal vents of their ocean world to power their civilization. They had developed biotechnology that worked in harmony with their environment, rather than destroying it. Most impressive to Ji-won was their approach to space travel, which used gravitational fields rather than chemical propulsion. Your people sound incredibly advanced, Ji-won said one evening as they sat on the couch. Hyuna was in her true form, her skin glowing softly in the dim light of the living room. Makes me wonder why you're interested in us at all. We're still burning fossil fuels and fighting wars over resources. Yuna turned to look at him, her large eyes reflecting concern. That is exactly the attitude that worries the Council. Humans often judge themselves too harshly. Well, compared to what you've described, we're pretty primitive. Technologically, perhaps, Hyuna agreed. But technology is not the only measure of advancement. In many ways, humans are far ahead of the HFY. Ji-won laughed. How do you figure that? Hyuna shifted on the couch, pulling her legs under her in a way that was graceful despite her non-human anatomy. Let me tell you about HFY society. We live in harmony, but we also live in isolation. Each family group stays within their designated territory. We cooperate on large projects, but we do not form close bonds outside our immediate genetic relatives. That sounds lonely. We do not experience loneliness the way humans do, Hyuna said. But we also do not experience the joy of chosen family. When I first read human literature and watched your entertainment media, I was confused by the concept of friendship. Why would individuals form strong bonds with those who share no genetic relationship? Ji-won considered this. I guess we just like connecting with people. Some of my closest friends are people I have nothing in common with on paper, but we just clicked. Exactly, Hyuna said, her skin brightening with excitement. This ability to click with others is uniquely human. You form bonds based on compatibility, shared experiences, and mutual respect rather than biological programming. Don't other species do that? Some form alliances for mutual benefit, Yuna explained. But humans form relationships for emotional fulfillment. You actively seek out connection with others, even when it serves no practical purpose, even when it requires effort and sacrifice. Ji-won thought about his own relationships. His best friend from high school lived across the country now, but they still talked every week. He sent care packages to his elderly neighbor when she was sick, even though she could afford to hire help. He volunteered at the local animal shelter despite having no pets of his own. I never thought of that as unusual, he said. It is remarkable, Yuna assured him, but it goes beyond human-to-human relationships. Humans form emotional bonds with other species. You keep animals as companions, not as tools or food sources. You create sanctuaries to protect creatures that serve no benefit to you. You even mourn the extinction of species you have never personally encountered. Well, yeah, other species are important. Why? Yuna asked, though her tone suggested she wasn't challenging him so much as making a point. Ji-won struggled to articulate something that felt obvious to him. Because they have value on their own. They don't exist just for our benefit. And the world is better when it's full of different kinds of life. Yuna's bioluminescent patterns pulsed brighter. That perspective is almost incomprehensible to most intelligent species. The idea that something has value simply because it exists, not because of what it can provide, is uniquely human. What about your people? Don't you care about other life forms? We protect our ecosystem because we depend on it for survival, Yuna said. It is logical and necessary. But humans protect things even when it costs them resources and provides no benefit. You have driven yourselves to extinction to save other species. You have changed your entire way of life to preserve environments you will never personally visit. Ji-won nodded slowly. I guess that's true. We do tend to care about things that don't directly affect us. And that is why you are so special, Yuna said earnestly. Humans do not just tolerate diversity, you celebrate it. You actively seek out new perspectives, new experiences, new ways of understanding the world, even when those perspectives challenge your existing beliefs. But we also fight wars over differences, Ji-won pointed out. We have racism, sexism, all kinds of prejudice. Yes, Yuna agreed. But you also have movements to overcome those prejudices. You have individuals who dedicate their lives to fighting inequality, even when they would benefit more from maintaining the status quo. You have humans who risk everything to help strangers who look nothing like them and speak different languages. Ji-won thought about the news stories he had seen over the years, people opening their homes to refugees, volunteers traveling to disaster zones to help with relief efforts, ordinary citizens standing up against injustice even when it put them in danger. I suppose we do have our moments, he said. You have more than moments, Yuna said firmly. You have a fundamental orientation toward connection and growth. When humans encounter something new, your first instinct is usually curiosity rather than fear. When you see suffering, your first impulse is usually to help rather than to look away. Not all humans are like that. No, Yuna acknowledged, but enough are that it defines your species. The humans who choose fear and hatred are acting against their nature, not because of it. That is why other humans fight so hard against those tendencies. Ji-won considered this perspective. He had always thought of humanity as fundamentally flawed, always struggling against its baser instincts. But maybe Yuna was right. Maybe those baser instincts weren't as fundamental as he had believed. So what does this mean for first contact? He asked. Yuna's expression became more serious. It means that I believe humans are ready for contact with other species. But I also know that the Council is afraid of how your governments might react. Official first contact typically involves formal diplomatic channels, military protocols, and lots of potential for misunderstanding. That does sound like it could go badly, Ji-won admitted. Politicians and generals aren't exactly known for their openness to new ideas. Exactly, Yuna said. Which is why I have been thinking about alternative approaches. What kind of alternatives? What if first contact did not happen through governments? Yuna asked. What if it happened through the channels where humans are most comfortable with diversity and new ideas? Ji-won's eyes widened as he understood what she was suggesting. You mean like universities? Cultural exchange programs? Precisely, Yuna said, her skin glowing with excitement. Humans excel at person-to-person connections. Your greatest breakthroughs in understanding between different groups have come through individual relationships, not political treaties. That's actually brilliant, Ji-won said, his mind racing with possibilities. Start with academic exchanges, cultural programs, maybe artistic collaborations. Let people get to know each other as individuals before bringing in the official stuff. It would take longer, Yuna said, but it would be more stable. Once humans form genuine connections with HFY individuals, the idea of interstellar cooperation becomes personal rather than abstract. Jiwon grinned. And you know what the best part would be? What? Humans love being the first to try something new. If you offered cultural exchange programs with an alien species, you would have more volunteers than you could handle. Yuna's laughter filled the apartment, a sound like water flowing over stones. I believe you are correct, and that may be exactly what both our species need. 3 weeks later, Jiwon found himself in the strangest situation of his life, which was saying something considering recent events. He sat in their living room with a laptop, a stack of notebooks, and what appeared to be a small device that looked like a cross between a smartphone and a piece of coral. Yuna had explained that it was a quantum communication device that could send messages instantly across interstellar distances. Are you sure about this? Yuna asked for the 5th time. She was in her human form, but Jiwon could see the nervous patterns of light flickering just beneath her skin. Once we send this proposal to the council, there will be no going back. I'm sure, Jiwon said, though his hands were shaking slightly as he reviewed their carefully written document. This is the right approach, and honestly, if your people are going to judge humanity based on how we react to this kind of opportunity, they should see us at our best. Over the past weeks, they had developed a comprehensive plan for gradual first contact through cultural and academic exchange. Instead of dramatic government announcements or military encounters, they proposed starting with small programs that would allow humans and HFY to interact as individuals. The plan began with a pilot program at 5 universities around the world. A small number of HFY volunteers would openly attend classes as exchange students, with their true nature revealed from the beginning. These volunteers would study human culture, language, and social dynamics while sharing their own knowledge of HFY science and philosophy. The beauty of this approach, Jiwon had argued during one of their planning sessions, is that universities are already set up for this kind of thing. We have international student programs, cultural exchange initiatives, and academic collaboration projects. Adding interstellar students is just an expansion of existing systems. Yuna had been skeptical at first. But what if the human students react with fear or hostility? Some might, Jiwon had admitted, but most won't. College students are naturally curious. They're at an age where they're questioning everything and exploring new ideas. Plus, universities tend to attract people who are already comfortable with diversity. Their proposal also included safeguards and support systems. Each HFY student would be paired with human mentors who could help them navigate social situations and cultural differences. There would be regular evaluation sessions to monitor how the integration was progressing. Most importantly, participation would be completely voluntary on both sides. We should probably include some kind of emergency protocols, Jiwon had suggested. What happens if someone reacts badly? What if the media finds out before we're ready? They had spent hours developing contingency plans for various scenarios. If negative reactions occurred, the program would have counselors and mediators available. If media attention became overwhelming, they would have predetermined responses that emphasized the peaceful and educational nature of the exchange. The second phase of their plan involved expanding to cultural institutions like museums, art galleries, and music programs. HFY artists and musicians would collaborate with human creators, sharing techniques and perspectives that could lead to entirely new forms of expression. Your people's bioluminescent communication could create amazing new art forms, Jiwon had pointed out, and our music might sound completely different to ears that evolved underwater. The creative possibilities are endless. The third phase would introduce practical collaboration in areas like environmental science and sustainable technology. HFY knowledge of ocean ecosystems could help humans address climate change, while human innovation in other areas might benefit HFY society. Only after all of these phases have been successful would we move to official government contact, Jiwon had explained. By then, first contact wouldn't be a shock or a threat. It would just be the logical next step in relationships that already exist. Now, as they prepared to send their proposal across the galaxy, Jiwon felt a mixture of excitement and terror. Everything they had discussed was theoretical until this moment. Once Huna transmitted their plan to the Aquari Council, it would become real. What do you think they'll say? Jiwon asked. I do not know, Huna replied honestly. This approach is completely different from anything they have considered before. It will require them to think about humans in a new way. What way is that? As partners rather than subjects of study, she said. Your proposal treats first contact as the beginning of a relationship rather than the end of an investigation. Jiwon nodded. That's exactly what it should be. Meeting your people shouldn't be about whether we're worthy of contact. It should be about what we can learn from each other. Huna's communication device chimed softly, indicating that it was ready to transmit. She looked at Jiwon one more time, her expression serious. If the council approves this plan, your life will change dramatically, she warned. You will likely be selected as one of the first human participants. Are you prepared for that? Jiwon thought about it seriously. The past month had already changed his life in ways he was still processing. He had learned that he was sharing his apartment with an alien, that Earth was being watched by multiple intelligent species, and that humanity was on the verge of first contact. Adding interstellar cultural exchange participant to that list didn't seem like such a big leap. Yeah, he said finally. I think I am. Besides, someone has to be first, right? Might as well be someone who's already gotten used to having an alien roommate. Huna laughed, the sound musical and warm. Very well. Let us see if the council agrees with our assessment of human nature. She activated the device, and their proposal disappeared into quantum space, traveling faster than light toward a planet 470 light-years away. According to Huna, they should receive a response within a few hours. As they waited, Jiwon found himself thinking about all the ways his life had changed since that morning when he had walked in on Huna in the bathroom. He had gained not just knowledge about alien life, but a deeper understanding of what it meant to be human. Can I ask you something? He said. Of course. When you first came here, what did you expect humans to be like? Huna considered the question carefully. We expected you to be more primitive and more predictable. We thought you would react to new situations based on simple survival instincts. We did not anticipate your capacity for growth and adaptation. And now I understand that humans are not primitive at all, she said. You are complex in ways that are difficult to measure or predict. You have the ability to transcend your basic programming and choose responses based on values rather than instincts. Jiwon felt a warm sense of pride, not just in himself, but in his entire species. Do you think the council will see it that way? I believe they will have to, Huna replied, because I am living proof of human adaptability. You have changed me as much as I have learned about you. I came here as an observer, but you have made me a participant. The communication device chimed again, indicating an incoming message. Huna's eyes widened as she read the response. What does it say? Jiwon asked, his heart racing. Huna looked up at him, her face breaking into the biggest smile he had ever seen from her. The council has approved our proposal. They want to begin the pilot program within 6 months. Jiwon felt a rush of excitement and disbelief. Really? They're actually going to try it? Not only are they going to try it, Huna said, her skin beginning to glow with excitement, but they want you to serve as the coordinator for the human side of the program. They were impressed by your perspective and your understanding of both species. Me? Jiwon said, pointing at himself. But I'm just a college student. I don't know anything about diplomacy or interstellar relations. You know the most important thing, Huna said warmly. You know how to see differences as opportunities rather than threats. You know how to turn strangers into friends. As the reality of what they had accomplished began to sink in, Jiwon looked at his alien roommate and realized that their friendship had become something much bigger than either of them had expected. They had not just bridged the gap between two individuals, but between two worlds. So what happens now? He asked. Now, Huna said, we get to work building the future. Together. Outside their apartment window, the stars were becoming visible in the darkening sky. For the first time in his life, Jiwon looked up at them and knew that humanity was not alone. More importantly, he knew that they were ready to take their place among the cosmic community, not as conquerors or subjects, but as friends. The age of interstellar friendship was about to begin, and it would start with two roommates who had learned that the greatest adventures come from opening your door to the unexpected.